Welcome to Life Mastery Radio with Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey, the show that dives into the science of higher consciousness with inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. Join Todd, Jackie, and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. It's all right here with stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Now, here's your hosts, Todd and Jackie.
Hey, it's another groovy day, and a lot of you know, but I'm going to say it anyway. That's because I make it that way. When I wake up in the morning, I automatically decide it's going to be a groovy day, and you know what? It always ends up that way. No matter what happens, something might change, something might be different, but I can always think back and say, hey, I need to look at this a little different. Because I started out making this day groovy. So what can I do? What differences? Or maybe I just need to be with it for a minute and see what the solution that comes out or pops up or how it resolves itself. So no stress, no worries. It's all a groovy day. And you can do that too. Try it. You like it. Just like Mikey, like Life Cereal. As always, I have my guest with me today, Jackie Bailey. No, she's not my guest. I'm on a roll. My co-host, Jackie Bailey. Hi, Jackie. How are you today?
Hello. I'm good today. Yes. You know what makes me groovy lately is, I
say that word very often.
I don't, but you do. So I was thinking, okay, well, how do I make my day groovy? And what I've been doing over the last couple of weeks is I'll walk home for lunch because I'm about 150 feet away from where I live right now in my studio.
Very fortunate.
And I'll go home for lunch, and I've been binge watching Monk. Do you remember that series, Monk, with the
he reminds me of Columbo. He reminds me of Columbo.
Yeah, I never watched that show when it was on in the 90s, and it's hilarious. I just started watching it one day. I thought, oh my gosh, this is fun to watch. So anyway,
that's some old comedy. You know another one that will really blow you away, and I don't even know if you can see the reruns, is All in the Family.
Oh, I'm surprised they allow that to be aired these days. There's obviously some.
Oh, I know. Can you imagine if that was on TV today? Oh my gosh, crazy.
Yeah. Wow.
I want to remind our listeners that today's show page. Oh wait, Jackie, update us on the Speak Feed Lead project. What's going on with the kiddos?
Well, as you know, last week we had 6 of our students speak at a 2-day summit. And
International summit, right?
Totally blew everybody away. I mean, the organizer of the summit, she could not believe. She thought, well, I'll have some kids on. What could go wrong, And everything went so right. Everybody there was just so impressed with the job my kids did. And I got to say, my buttons were popping too, because I was delighted with the way they carried themselves. I knew that they had been hard at work preparing for it and making sure that they were going to be able to say exactly what they wanted to say and what their message really was. And it's delightful to watch these young kids.
I can feel the energy right now. I've got chicken skin. Just from you describing it, I've seen a couple of the kids, but so where can somebody go and see the videos maybe?
I'm working with hopefully some virtual assistants that can get those separated into separate videos, because the organizer she did one recording of the whole summit each day, and it's like, that's a lot of information. So we're working with somebody who can do that for me, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, keep us posted. That is so cool. If you want to know more on how your young person can gain these amazing skills, it is just amazing. The return on investment is a lifetime. You can't, and you're training future leaders. Gosh, you might even have the next one of the presidents of the United States or Congress or Speaker of the House.
That'd be cool. Then I could get like the Medal of Honor, whatever that is.
That'd be a huge feather.
Would be awesome.
Stay tuned for more news at 11. I want to remind our listeners that today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.net or .com, whichever one you prefer or remember. And you can go there. Any links that we talk about, we have some really cool links for our guests today. So if you want to know more, you can take an assessment, you can connect with them. And I'll just give the teaser now. learn how you can break those habits, whether good or bad. I guess, we'll have to ask our guest if you can have a good habit. I guess you can. Sure. Sure. You don't want to break good habits. That's an interesting take. Also on our webpage, you can find my book. My book is right there. Link. You can go to Amazon, buy it, enjoy it, leave some feedback. Jackie has a book. You can find a couple of books. She's in a couple of books, and I think she's cooking on another one too. I better catch up quick.
Comes out next month, our launch party. So
Cool.
yeah.
You can find those links, and we have a newsletter, and the newsletter goes out once a week. Jackie writes a post about the show we did. She highlights who's coming on the show and who's been on the show. So there's some really cool content that you're not going to want to miss. And then you can just go over to our YouTube channel and watch the video, watch the interview. It's pretty cool. All of them are there. You can surf around, find one you like, find a topic you like, and enjoy yourself. Everybody's into YouTube. And do you watch a lot of YouTube, Jackie?
I do, because there's a lot of really helpful information there with my kids.
I've learned
for the next part of our curriculum, we're working on some of those iconic speeches from great moments in history. And YouTube is a great place to be able to find at least similar copies of what those speeches were.
Amazing. If I want to know how to do something, I can find it. It's
how to cut your own hair.
It's my role. It's my university. That's where I go to get educated.
That's right.
All righty then. I think that if I remember correctly, this is your guest, Sunshine. So you get to do the intro.
Yeah, but before I do that, I want to just say that right after today's show, I am speaking on a summit called the Life Mastery Super Summit. It has no relationship to our show, but it's just a coincidence that I'm a speaker on this summit right after our show. And I did put a link to get there on our Facebook page. So if anyone's interested in hearing me speak, it comes right after the show. Anyhow,
check it out.
Anyway, yeah. All right. Well, our guest today is a recent acquaintance. I'm so delighted that I did connect with him. His name is Doug Stoddard. And back in the 70s, I loved Elvis Presley. And one of the movies he made was with Mary Tyler Moore. It was called Change of Habit. And it was a great movie. Of course, everything Elvis did was wonderful. But today, our guest is going to tell us about breaking habits. He is the habit breaking expert. And he asks, have you ever found yourself stuck in a bad habit or not realize you had a bad habit until someone, pointed it out? If you have a significant other, that happens every day. Or even worse, you didn't know you had a bad habit and then you got burned by it. Yeah, ouch. Well, habit management, he says, is all about learning what your habits are and turning the bad ones into good ones. So there, he says it's okay to have good habits. Doug Stoddard is the habit breaker expert, as I mentioned, and he says 90% of business problems are people's personal problems in disguise, and that personal problems are driven by their habits of thinking. So we're going to learn a lot about ourselves today. Todd and I have actually both taken an assessment that share on air the results of, and you're going to learn all of our dirty laundry. But please welcome our wonderful guest, Doug Stoddard.
Hey, thank you so much. I can tell this is going to be a fun show.
It always is. I told you. You.
This is great. So thank you for the opportunity of being here.
Oh, really, you're welcome. Absolutely.
So Doug, how does one get it to be an expert in how we break habits? And there are good habits, there are bad habits. Kind of give us some insight on why it is we do pick up these bad habits. Is it something that is unconscious thinking it is? Yeah.
Great question, Todd. I got into this because we had a very successful business. I thought it was successful. Okay, and we had some employees and it was just going great the way life does, you think you're at the top of the pinnacle. And then there were people in another company we were working with, they weren't honest in some of their dealings, and the lawsuits against them took them down, took us down. And we ended up in bankruptcy. And at the same time, we had 2 of our 6 children. Everybody's saying, "Oh, you're such great parents, Doug and Susan. You're such great parents, great kids." Well, we did it. But 2 of them didn't want anything to do with us for over 9 years. And we didn't know why. I don't know about you and your guests. You ever have a problem communicating with your kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't come into this world with the instruction booklet, do we, Doug? So,
That's right.
Todd and I both have adult children now, and it's a whole different ball game.
It is. I have these 6 children and 19 grandchildren, and you're right, Todd. We don't come in with the plan on how to communicate. What we do come into, though, is we come into an environment in which we mimic what other people do to communicate. And we mimic how they react to things, and we mimic all these different things, and that's all programmed into our brain. So now we try to go through the rest of our life taking that programming and thinking it's us,
right.
and trying to maneuver throughout our lives. So that's where I was. And I'll tell you what, habits of thinking, we all have them. Some really serve us and some do not serve us at all. The challenge is when we go through tough times, they tend to just light up. They get triggered so much, and we hear so much internal dialogue going on. And that's where I was. Oh, it's been 15, 20 years ago, I guess, probably. That's where I was. And I didn't know how to escape that or change it. I bought programs. I went into courses. I did all this stuff. And I'd feel so close at times, or I'd even break through a little bit, then it's fall back in. And I just felt like it was, I just didn't know how to win. And I was trying to go around looking like I was a 9, had it all together. But inside I felt like a 2.
Oh.
You know, Doug, I learned how to do it the hard way, right? Maybe becoming aware of that mind reeling, right? And I was taught to just go and look myself in the mirror and yell at myself, "Stop it, quit doing this." And you know, I don't know if that was a good strategy. I was doing some other things, but I'll tell you this. I remember the exact moment where I was, what I was doing, when I came to the realization that I could control what I was thinking about. And it was huge. This thing couldn't wind on its own without my supervision and my permission.
That was a pretty memorable day then.
I was on a crosswalk walking across the street, and I was in the middle of the crosswalk. And to this day, I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing. And it was huge for me when I realized that I could choose what to think about.
You know, and that was an epiphany for me as well. I can tell you when I read, oh, you mean this isn't me up here? This isn't all that self-talk? And so that's cool. And Jackie already had it figured out, right?
Oh no. Oh no, but I did hear an interesting story yesterday about a scientific experiment with rats, because they were actually trying to determine how stress affects us with, and you know, when you're feeling your thoughts with negativity, you're going to have some stress, right? So this may apply. I believe it does. But they were showing how baby rats that were put with nurturing mothers had lower stress triggers, and that when stress came up, they handled it really well. But on the other hand, if they put baby rats without their mother, or with a mother that was, you know, uptight, stressed, or whatever, then the rats would not handle stress well. But this is the important part, is it was generational. So it became part of their genetics. And so for generations, the baby rats who had developed these triggers for stress in a bad way, passed it down to all of their offspring. So, and I certainly, you can't say that we're like rats as human beings, but we probably are more like that than not, in that, because what you say is we learn to react to things by what we see other people doing to react to things. And therefore it does become generational. It may not be genetic, but that behavior becomes something that's repeated over and over and over again.
Yeah, boy, that's so true. And the rats are true. This rat story is true. We mimic, even as adults, we mimic. And so can I share with you how these habits of thinking are created? Would that be helpful?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. So I like to share my dog story because many of us have a dog story. Dogs we love, but this dog didn't love me. And I was 2 years old and I was delivering newspapers. And for many months, it had been a race between me and the dog to see who was going to survive. And one day he caught me and just ripped my leg. I got infected. I had to have a lot of shots. For a 10-year-old, it was pretty traumatic. What do you think I felt like the next time I saw another dog?
Complete panic.
Panic, run.
Fear. Yeah.
Fear,
And they can
right?
sense that.
They can, and they run faster than I did. So 3 months later, I was delivering papers again, and a 10-year-old bully came out of the house and just started pounding on me, knocking me off my bike, and he did it repeatedly. And to my 10-year-old brain, he looked like the dog. So what do? You run from it. So I told Mom to take care of the bully. Well, that didn't work. The bully just got more intense. And so I began to create a pattern of reacting. It went clear through my high school years, even into some college, where if anything got tough, I quit or ran from it, didn't deal with it. And that doesn't serve us at all.
Right.
So this is what the brain does with your dog story, whatever your dog story is, and we have many of them. And they're stored in what's called our neural pathways. And they're little grooves in your brain. Science can measure these. We can measure those. And we're going to show those a little bit later. So this is how I explain it. This is Doug 101 neuroscience, really basic, okay? But I've studied a lot of neuroscience. I've been trained in what I do for years. I love it. And also my degree is in corporate training. So I just love the training aspect of teaching. So you get a gate in front of this little groove, this neural pathway, and it has a trigger on it. And the trigger is the dog story. Okay. So when life shows up and something looked like the dog story, it could be your parents telling you weren't enough. It can be abuse. It can be parents maybe comparing you to another sibling and why don't you get the same grades? And I had one president of a company whose parent told him he'd never measure up to anything because he wasn't going to do the kind of schooling his dad thought he should do. Yet the guy's really successful now. But that carried with him. It was in one of those grooves. And so when life shows up, it pushes that button and the gate opens. And the first thing you get are chemicals that drop into the groove, into your neural pathway. When that happens, you know it's happened because you immediately will feel emotions.
Yeah.
Fear, anger. It can turn into frustration, overwhelm, underwhelm. All these myriad of emotions can show up. And there are good habits of thinking. So you can also have good emotions showing up. Okay. But the ones that are not so good speak so loud that they drown out our good ones. So emotions are going. If you leave that gate open for over 90 seconds, the brain, I don't know how it does it, but it turns it into thoughts. So we start hearing things like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? So we begin to get distortion about ourselves. how we see ourselves when these habits of thinking and talking. It also distorts how we see other people. What's wrong with them? They said they were going to do this, and it causes us to focus not on the individual, but on the behavior.
Hmm.
And now
That's
the
good.
person becomes the behavior
Mm-hmm.
into our subconscious mind. And so you get emotions, you get thoughts, and you get distortion that changes our true identity in that moment. And now here we are, we're trying to go through life being successful, communicating so we develop strong relationships, strong cultures in our business. And we're fighting emotions, we're fighting self-talk and distortion. And the tendency for many of us, Todd and Jackie, is that we'll tend to just stuff it.
Mm-hmm.
Got to stuff that emotion. And if you're an entrepreneur, I just got to work harder.
Mm.
Yeah.
You ever felt that way? I just got to push through it. Ignore the emotions and just push through it.
Yeah.
That doesn't work because it stuffs it in your bag of life. And you can only stuff so much mental stuff in there, right?
And then it gets heavy.
Oh, yeah, it feels like bricks.
Yeah.
And then you'll
Especially
find
if it's all negative stuff, right? I mean,
yeah, it's negative stuff. And it erupts. You can only stuff so much. For probably 55 years, I had a real anger issue
Mm-hmm.
that was tied back into a situation with my dad when I was a little boy, where he went through depression. I felt like he had left me. That's how I interpreted it. And I had a terrible anger issue. I didn't beat my kids or anything like that, but man, they could trigger me real quick if they were disrespectful to the mom. And that wasn't fun.
yeah.
So some people have anger issues. Some people go to apple pie. I like to go to apple pie too.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's nothing wrong with that one, right?
So anyway, that's what we have. We all have it. The challenge is, Todd and Jackie, is that these neural pathways are under the surface. We experience it, we feel it, but we don't know what to do with it. And many of them, we go through life and we're not even aware of it.
Yeah. It's a reaction, right? I mean, it's just, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
We don't. And especially when we're in times where there's so much change and pressure and stress, people's habits of thinking are being triggered to a level I don't think they've been triggered for a long time.
No, Doug, I sense that there are a lot of people listening right now who are having an epiphany. They're going, oh, is that why? Oh, that makes sense. And they're having those types of reactions because even though this information might have come to us from a different method before, I think the way you explained it is really, really helpful to understand how the brain itself works. And it's a lot like a computer in that we upload lots of information in there. And sometimes we can control it. Sometimes we can't. We open a document. Sometimes there's things in there that we don't necessarily want. But there's all these files. Right? And all these files represent some things that we were going to do. They represent things that are important to us. They represent things that someday we're going to get to, whatever. And we don't realize that we can go in and delete some of these things, that we can actually change the program, and we don't have to go with the defaults that come with whatever device we've purchased or whatever, that we actually have the power be able to do that. But that's not easy, right? Because it is in there. Even when you delete a document off your computer, it's actually not deleted. It's still there, right?
Right.
So just like a habit is still there, even though you think for a week, I haven't had a cup of coffee or whatever the goal is, whatever habit you're trying to break. The minute you walk into a store at the mall and you smell coffee, it's like, oh man, I'm going to go have just one cup. And it's just so easy to fall back because it's still there. You haven't completely deleted it. So is there a method that we can actually delete these bad habits, or is it something that you just teach us how to manage and make better decisions as those habits are triggered from time to time?
Boy, that's a great question. So people ask me all the time, how long does it take to break a habit? Well, your brain never forgets.
Mm.
So the only
Wait
thing
a
you
sec,
can
it's
do-
21 days, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've always been told 20. It's 21 days.
Now, really what it is, it's the frequency and the consistency of you practicing an action.
Yeah.
So it can happen maybe a little faster, maybe it takes longer, but there's not a set time. But 21 days, a month is a good start with it. But we're talking about neural pathway changes. And the other thing about it is, as we go into this a little deeper, I want people to understand, Jackie, you alluded to it, that everything that's going on in there, it's biology. It's not who we are. You just have a biological system that can be triggered, chemicals flow, creates emotions, drives thoughts, but it's all subconscious. And until you can become aware of what it is and pull it out of the subconscious and then begin to consciously shift it, then your brain will begin to create a new neural pathway. But there's no channel after it, the gate. That takes time, that takes practice. So what I help people to do is I give them two little people just beyond the gate. They have shovels in their hands. And every time we help them to become aware, make a choice, and take an action, these two little people will take a shovel load of dirt, throw it over their shoulders, and it goes into the old neural pathway.
Fill it in.
And it begins to fill it in so that the brain begins to learn to go to a new one, but it also doesn't allow the chemicals to go down so far. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So it's a visual. It's like what am I reminded of? Like cancer patients that are trying to, go through a healing process, and they picture that cancer as little monsters, and then they send in the monster eaters, and the monster eaters just find but science has proven that is a viable way to help people with that process. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, you nailed it, Todd, there, because the brain can't tell what's real and what isn't.
Exactly.
So we're going to show that when we go into your profiles here in just a minute.
I'm going to delay us a little bit longer, but no, I'm just kidding.
Face your fear, Todd. No.
That's right.
Touche, my friend. Touche.
Yeah. So it's fascinating. I hear people talk in habits of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge most of us have, and I have my own coaches. I have to, because I'm so close to my habits of thinking and my actions. I can't tell what I'm saying and doing. So it's so helpful to be able to have someone hear what you're saying. I was just with a client yesterday, and when I gave him a suggestion about doing something, I asked him, "Where's your mind going right now?" And he's, "Oh, it's telling me why it won't work." And I said, I called him out on it. That's not serving you. That's a habit of thinking. We call it catastrophe thinking. Go into the negative of why things won't work. But you have to become aware of it. Then you have to know what to do in the moment when it shows up.
Right.
Yeah.
You also want to know what's in your bag of life that's triggering it. So if people are getting triggered and they get these emotional things going on, it's because they got something in their bag.
You just hit on something too. That's why, a lot of things come to my mind. Where two or more are gathered, I am there. But I think what you're talking about is that accountability, right? That person holding you accountable. And even though you might be the doctor, you can't practice in your hometown, right?
I like that. Can I use that? I like that. Hometown. Yeah, that's so true.
Well, so what you're saying, Doug, I think what I'm getting from this then is we shouldn't believe our brain. I mean, there's lots of thoughts in there that simply are not true. And because we have this thought, we're thinking, oh, yeah, I am stupid. Or yeah, this, you know, this is a ridiculous outfit to wear. And those thoughts, we take them at full value when they don't mean anything. And that we have an opportunity to look at this and go, this isn't true, and just deny it. But that's a habit in itself, right?
Yeah.
So that takes this habitual notion to say, okay, when I have a thought like that, I'm going to think of something else and break that thought, the idea that that's true. So there's two sides then of the brain. Is that when we have a positive thought, we want to go, yeah, okay, I like that idea. I'm run with it. But if we have a negative thought, we need to look at that and go, that's not true. I'm not going to believe that, and set it aside somewhere. So that does not seem like an easy thing to do, because our brain is with us all the time. It's like at night, I cannot shut off my thoughts. So how do we start to do that?
Well, you know, it's first of all is awareness. And the second thing is to understand what's triggering it and what's the story behind it. So here's an example. And I'm going to show this in your profile here in just a minute, but it's.
If we keep going, Jackie, we won't have time.
Yeah. But anyway,
I'm not afraid.
Okay.
yeah,
I got her to say it.
I'm not near what I used to be in being the king of needing to be right. And as I work with people, this is such a prevalent thing with entrepreneurs. And I'll show you where that measurement is, but I just needed to be right. I had to prove my point. And see, for most people, what's driving that is how they see their self-worth and how they use their mind to create expectations that are usually unrealistic. And so when you add your brain's ability to visualize and to think, and it creates very quickly, it'll create an expectation. If anybody challenges your idea or belief of how to raise the kids, how to spend the money, how you should move forward in a project, whatever it may be, if they challenge it and you have self-worth talk going on, negative self-worth talk, your brain attaches that to your self-worth. It attaches your expectation, your belief, your idea to that self-worth. And your brain's job is to keep you safe and predictable. So now it will fight to the finish to keep you safe and predictable. And so we just keep needing to be right, which leads into arguments, which leads into divorce, which leads into shallow relationships. Or the other side of it is when we sit there and we feel this, but we're submissive and we don't want conflict. And so we fight it. We don't say anything, but inside it even diminishes our value more.
We have the ability to rationalize irrational behavior.
Yeah, we do. So what do we do? The steps they're simple, but they're not easy. Become aware of what your habits of thinking are. And this is what this profile does. We've used it from Fortune 50 companies down to moms who are building business out in their homes. And we've done over 200,000 of these. And it saves tons of time of trying to figure out what's driving you, what's triggering you, and those types of things. So that's the first step. Become aware of it. The second step is break it into small pieces. Our brain can see you already in Hawaii, Jackie. It can see Todd already finishing his Chevy pickup, right? It's got it all done. Okay?
Right.
It doesn't have to go by time. It doesn't work by the clock. And so we tend to look at the whole picture and then judge our progress.
Right.
based on the complete outcome, because the brain can see it. And so often I found the number one challenge that people have is they don't feel like they're winning.
Hmm.
And there's multiple reasons for that. They're comparing themselves to other people, or they got this huge picture of what they're supposed to do, and you can't celebrate until the whole job's done. And I've found so much success with people if they'll simply break it into small pieces.
And celebrate that accomplishment, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Of that little piece. And then there's a big reward when you finally accomplish it or you finally get there. But there's just the little steps, and reward yourself.
But a lot of us don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I find, Doug, I tell myself, okay, if I mow the lawn and I rake up all the grass, then I could spend time on my truck, or then I can play with my dog. But I gotta, this will be my reward if I just accomplish this task.
That's good.
I play that game a lot with a lot of things, because I'll contemplate, it's really hot. Do I really want to get the lawnmower out? Do I really want to, the battery's going to be dead and I'm going to have to charge it, and your mind just goes on and on and on. And then you just say, stop. If I do that, then I can play with the dog, or I can go out and work on my truck. And it works.
Yeah.
It's amazing. When I pick up a piece of paper that I'd normally feel like, I'm just going to leave it, I pick it up and I say, way to go, Dougie.
Yeah.
And I high five myself.
That's cool.
And I do that probably 10, 12 times a day. It
Nice.
validates.
Okay, so it looks like we have about 15 minutes left. We better get on to these assessments. Now,
Yeah.
Doug, people can go to your website and take this assessment. The link is at lifemasteryradio.net or .com. Is that correct?
Well, they can go in there. Yeah, they have access to take it, but also to get on a 30-minute call with me, which then allows me to get a little more, get to know them. Then I can give them a link from there to also.
Okay.
take it. So,
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's go see what we're made of. Jackie first.
But it took us about 10 minutes to do this or so, right? Right,
I
Todd?
don't think maybe it took us about 10 minutes.
Yeah. And we just basically had a list of things that were good and bad, and we had to order them in how we thought were the most important. What was the priority of order, I guess. So,
Yeah.
It was kind of bizarre because, I'm a very investigative person, and I was looking at these questions and the tasks that you had to do, and I'm like, how can he get a result from that?
yeah, interesting, huh?
Yeah. 'Cause you're just using words and statements around it. You can't fool this because it's based on what we call axiological mathematics.
Yeah.
So these are the stories you're talking about that have happened to us. This is what's shaped our habits and our thinking, right?
Yeah, how we've reacted to them, the story, the emotions that are behind it, this distortion, it's telling us all these things. And so it's quite fascinating. Real quickly, I just want to, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to explain, just so people understand this, the green is who we really are. It's our gifts, our talents. And for some people, it's how God made us, okay? When you get into color bars, it represents that there is a habit of thinking in there that's being triggered enough that we can measure it.
Mm.
So if it's if it's yellow, it may mean low risk, that how frequently it's happening, as well as pulling you away from your greenhood, from being green, okay? Who you really are, your authentic, real self.
Okay.
Okay, when you get into a red, it means that, man, some days it can feel like you're just dealing with those thoughts inside and the emotions are getting triggered all day long. And some people say it feels like a habit hangover,
Yeah.
And so, but the important thing about these is everything you want, Todd, everything you want, Jackie, and all your listeners, including myself, everything you want in life is right behind these bars. Your habits of thinking, everything. If you're looking to move your business forward, It's like one guy who hired me to increase his income, help him increase his income. We had to remove 3 log jams in his habits of thinking. And then he could move forward to increase his income.
Oh,
Until that point, it was sabotaging him.
Hmm.
So these are your greatest assets. So I'm going to show you are your greatest assets. They are not negatives at all. It's just, how do they impact you? Is it effective or is it ineffective?
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to go down here, and we won't have time, obviously, for all of them. But when I go through with people, I get into a little more detail. But the question right here, and this is Todd's on the left right here. And Jackie's, yours over here.
Okay.
Okay, so my question to Todd, what we're measuring is this thing right here, is what is your performance focus? In other words, what's driving you? We're always green until one of these gets triggered and it pulls us away.
Right.
So my question to you, Todd and Jackie, because you both have measurements that go off to the right, is who was it in your life at some point that made you feel like you weren't enough? You couldn't measure up. At least that's how you interpreted it.
Okay.
My drill instructor.
Really? I can understand
That's
that.
their job.
But I think this one goes back even further. For some people, it's abuse. Others, it was like my dad's depression, and others could be a parent left. All kinds of things. But just think about that. What is it, Todd, in your life?
You know, my mother was very supportive, and I don't know that it comes from there. And my dad was, you know, he's kind of distant, but they always encouraged me. So I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe my grandfather was really distant, and you know, I always tried to get really close to him, and I just seemed to be a burden.
Okay. Did you hear that word that you used? A burden.
Or not that important, right?
Okay, not that important. Okay, so
even though I was his grandson, right? And he did all kinds of cool things that I was really interested in, but yeah, I was never invited to the party, I guess.
okay. See, these stories are very subtle.
Yeah.
We may look back at them and say, well, it's no big deal, but it could be driving. I'm going to show you. What about you, Jackie?
Oh, it was definitely my mother. Absolutely.
Do you mind sharing with us what you mean by that?
She was ashamed of me. She was absolutely ashamed of me.
That kind of hurts, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to show you a connection, because if you got a color bar happening here, it's not just going to be there. It's going to connect into other areas of your life. So this is about your dreams, how in your mind, how you're creating your dreams, how you see it unfolding. Okay, so we're measuring things like what's driving you. You're both very green. You're doing it because you're self-directed and you want to do it, you get to. But I want to go down here to the next level. And this is Joy, and this is Todd's. Let me go down there. You got a lot of green in here, really. This is cool. A lot of green. So it's just awesome. This one here, though, speaks really loud, Jackie. And what we're measuring is finding peace. And Todd's over here is we're measuring recognition and money, whatever that means. It's external things. Okay, it could be whether you're getting enough pay raise, or if you're getting enough likes on Facebook, or if you're getting enough people liking your Chevy pickup, or whatever it may be. And for you, Todd, it's showing up like it's not happening fast enough.
That's fascinating.
And when we're in, do you feel that sometimes, that some of the things you're looking for validation on?
You know, not so much. I don't look for external validation so much. And I've always prided myself on that, but and recognition, it's, but there must be something underlying deep down inside that thinks differently.
Okay, so this very well could just be looking for somebody to a relationship.
Hmm.
Looking for that. It's once again, these things are really subtle as to how they're showing up for you. But anyway, this one's impatience, and it's because you have an expectation of something happening, and it's just not happening fast enough.
Well, that could very well be. Yeah.
So the brain's saying, come on, let's get going. Come on. What it does though, when it's talking to you, you're there when you're moved out of, you're in an impatience mode and you're not in gratitude.
Mm.
Gratitude helps us move forward. Impatience or disheartened don't.
Or is it over expectation?
Yeah. In fact, I'm going to show you that in just a second. I want to talk about this one with Jackie.
Off the charts.
Off the charts. Well, mine was there for so long. And what's cool about, or what's interesting about this is this one right here is all based on unmet, unrealistic expectations, which pulls you out of finding peace at moments.
Yeah.
And not finding joy. Work like crazy.
Ding,
but
ding,
just not
ding, ding.
Yeah.
finding much joy.
Right.
And does that make sense, Jackie?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I battled that for a long time. This is like, if I'm not working, then I'm not doing what I need to be doing. Yeah. And yet, even though I work really hard, I still don't get the results that I feel like I should, commiserate to the work I'm putting in. So it's all very frustrating.
And that's being driven by right here. See, when perfection's talking to us, it wouldn't matter how well we did. It's still not enough.
Yeah.
And so we look at ourselves as, what's wrong with me? Or we can look that way. What's wrong with me? Why? I guess I got to just take on another project because then I'll feel good about myself or that I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So anyway, I want to go down and tie it into this one, which is self-worth, how we see ourselves.
Looks like we've got about 4 minutes left.
Okay.
We're running out of time here.
Darn. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So this one.
We'll have to have you back on the show, Doug. We'll have you back.
That would be nice. So this one, I want to tie it all together. This one right here, if you got a perfection habit of thinking that's being triggered, for here, what it's doing is it's saying, it's questioning your very worth as a human being at times. That's what it feels like. And so it's what it feels like, this habit of thinking. It's not just what it talks about, it's what it feels like to you. And so often it's that story. It is that story of somewhere in the background where you just weren't enough. And so when it gets triggered, it feels like I'm just not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough with that. Then over here, it's the same way. There's some talk there. It's not who you are, it's the talk. Okay, one other quick thing here. I want to jump down here because we only got 2 minutes now. This is actually your outer world. And this right here is an entrepreneurial trait. So what we're measuring is your ability to come up with ideas. This is saying, Todd, that you may feel at times your brain just never shuts down. It's just always going.
Oh, I've created so many cool things in my mind. It's just amazing.
Okay. Well, Jackie has some of this too. Most entrepreneurs do. This is where you create the expectation I talked about. And if somebody challenges it, what it can feel like, and I'm going to go back up here to both of yours, what it feels like is right here, Jackie, it feels like they're questioning your very core beliefs, your values, how you see things. That's what it feels like.
Right.
And then the brain fights that. Oh my goodness. And over here, Todd, it can move you into questioning, feel like your very worth. And it can also drive you into comparing yourself to other people. What they have, what they've accomplished, that kind of thing. When it's talking to you, that's not who you are. So I hope this has been helpful. You've been great sport.
That is fascinating.
Yeah,
I don't know how you would have figured all that out from the questions I answered. I'm blown away. Now my mind's going to be reeling. Well, how did that work? I don't know. No.
This is what you do, Doug, right? You talk with the clients about and help them to see themselves perhaps for the first time in the way that their thinking is affecting, what their success is, right? So that's really
right.
cool.
And then I
really
help
cool.
them through, if it's appropriate, timing's right, they're motivated, then I do coaching and training for corporations, those types of things.
That's
So,
awesome. Cool.
Go ahead and stop sharing, Doug, if you
Okay.
could. And I want to thank you so much for showing up and sharing with us. That was so cool, and you definitely piqued my interest. So you might be getting a phone call from me.
cool. I'd love to finish walking you through it.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Thank you so much, and for sure we're gonna have to have you back on the show. Jackie, any takeaways?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm going to get back with Doug for sure. And this is the start, right? This is the start of seeing those stories, understanding why we have those thoughts, and then we can begin to change them, right?
Yeah, I think for me,
So cool.
there's something even. I've done a lot of work, in introspection and doing. But this is telling me that there are some other things maybe that are under the surface that I need to take a look at. So
Yeah.
fascinating.
Oh.
It will help you go to the next level, whether it's in your relationships with people, your business growth,
Right.
whatever it
Wow,
is.
that's cool, Doug.
Thanks again, Doug. I really appreciate you showing up as you today, and thank you. Namaste, my friend. That was very cool stuff.
How do they find you really quick online? How do they find you, Doug?
It's just www.dougstoddard.com.
Easy enough. The link's on today's show page at www.lifemasteryradio.net or .com, whichever one you prefer. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Please tell a friend about it. And lastly, please check out Doug's stuff. You're going to want to take that assessment and make it a great day, because it's all about choice. Bye-bye for now.
Break a habit, don't break a leg.
Thank you for tuning in to Life Mastery Radio. Join Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery through stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Visit their website, www.lifemasteryradio.com. Join their mailing list and be notified about upcoming guests. That's lifemasteryradio.com.